Alrighty, so I'm Leanne from the Vermilion District Chamber of Commerce, and as you all know, federal election 2021 is among us, and we will be interviewing Anne McCormack from the People's Party of Canada today. So thank you for joining me, Anne.
Hi, Leanne. Thank you for putting all this on. I know it's been a lot of jumping through hoops.
Oh, no problem. Happy to be there. So I guess we'll just start out. You can just kind of introduce yourself and why you decided to run.
Okay, well, that's always a long question, but I'll try and keep it short. My name is Anne McCormack, and we live on a small farm by Clandonald. I'm a former pharmacist, and I guess I saw Maxime Bernier speak a couple of times, once in Red Deer, and then once in Lloydminster not that long ago. And I really liked some of his policies, especially when he got started talking about radical decentralization of power from Ottawa to the provinces again. That was really resonated with me. My parents were always very interested in politics, especially Alberta politics. And of course, when I was a kid and they were most interested was when Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister. And of course, he preached that Canada needed a strong centralized government and wanted more and more control over Alberta in particular's natural resources. So to hear Bernier do a complete opposite of that made my ears perk up. And then I learned that the Lakeland candidate was not available. And it was really getting down to the wire there towards the end of August. And I was asked to put my name forward to stand up for the values that the People's Party of Canada represented. And I thought, oh, I'll do it, sure.
Alrighty, well, excellent. So I guess we will just get right into the questions. We will be asking all the candidates the same questions, but kind of in different orders. So we will start with Quebec has seen many benefits in threatening separation from Canada and has seen Confederation work in their favor while Alberta has been on the losing end. What is your position on separating from the rest of Canada?
Way to go. What a great question. Well, I think that the sentiment for separation in Alberta is real. People mean it. It's here. And the point of separation is for Alberta to have control over money, resources, and our own affairs. Now, if Maxime Bernier is preaching about radical decentralization of government, I believe that and renegotiating equalization and giving us control over where our tax dollars are spent, I believe that will address a lot of those issues. I've heard that people are just sort of playing around saying or threatening separation just to see where it gets us. And I don't believe that. I believe that there is a real sincere wish among a lot of people, maybe even more than our government realizes right now, for Alberta to be a separate nation or for the West to be a separate nation, sort of like East Germany, West Germany.
Okay. Is your party going to get us out of the UN? The Paris Accord is going to slowly kill the energy sector in Alberta.
Yes. Have you been reading the policy? That is exactly the People's Party of Canada's policy.
Actually,
yes.
These questions all came from your constituents, so.
Yay, constituency. Yeah, Lakeland's on fire. No, the People's Party of Canada specifically says in their policy that tax dollars generated from the hard work of Canadians should not go to an unelected body like the UN. We do not support the Paris Accord. We do support decentralizing that power down to the provinces and working with the provinces so that they may develop their own solutions to the unique problems and triumphs that they've had in keeping our air, water, land clean. An example of that would be, Scott Moe not that long ago proposed some environmental policy that was struck down for Saskatchewan, but the same policy more or less was approved for New Brunswick. So I think that the provinces need to take control of that so that there's no bias at the federal level.
Pandemic debt and climate change costs demand a serious, bold plan to grow our economy. What is your plan?
Oh, okay. Well, that's two separate policy platforms that anybody is able to access on the People's Party of Canada website. So we do have really good policy on that. Boy, would I ever love to talk to you about our COVID policy. So first of all, the People's Party of Canada believes in informed consent. We don't believe in mandates. Point number 2 on the People's Party of Canada policy says fire Dr. Tam and replace her with somebody that is able to work with the provinces. Healthcare is under provincial jurisdiction. However, I mean, the COVID scare, the COVID pandemic, and so much of the COVID funding is, you know, starts right, you know, it involves our school level politics. It goes all the way up to international travel. So it is a broader scope than just the province. So our policy states, and Bernie's very, very clear on that, is to stop funding for the COVID and treat people as individuals, treat cases individually. If you have symptoms, treat them. If there's a vulnerable sector of the population, support that sector, but do not mandate it.
Okay. Where does not only your party, but your personal stand on the issue of mandatory vaccination, vaccination passports, and the restriction to travel not only internationally, but also across our whole country?
Well, being able to move, freedom of movement is a pillar of freedom, just like a measure of freedom, just like taxation and free speech and all the rest of it. I am absolutely against mandatory vaccination and masking mandates. Passports are ridiculous between provinces. If we are a free people, then we should be able to travel between provinces without hindrances, without being told to produce your papers. Where we're going with this is a slippery slope. What I've said at a couple of my talks is that on the COVID and transportation and freedom and all the rest of these things, schools do not own your children. So mandatory vaccination is out the window as far as in minors, as far as that goes. And I don't believe that minors can form consent properly. Your boss, your employer does not own your body. So for an employer to suggest that you must be vaccinated or masked in order to work there is beyond the pale. I mean, at what point did employers decide that they could own your body, and where does it stop? What if an employee decides to start a family, for instance, but it's not at a good time as far as the employer is concerned? Or what if an employee needs another type of treatment, like a cancer treatment, but it's not convenient at that time for your employer? No, your employer does not own your body. And as far as government intervening in your personal health decisions, this is way off base. The government doesn't own your body or your soul either. These mandates are one of the things that I decided to stand up to represent the People's Party over. The party doesn't agree with it, and I personally don't agree with it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on a woman's right to access abortion? What limits do you think should be imposed, if any?
Okay, our party, the People's Party of Canada, does not have an official platform on that. My own view is a Christian view, and I have to say that I am against abortion. I am against gender selective abortion, and I am against late term abortion.
Where do you stand on the proposed capital gains tax for the sale of your principal residence?
Oh my goodness, isn't that it? Well, we are a conservative party, and so we believe in small government and lower taxes. So capital gains on the sale of your primary residence means that whatever profit that you may make on that, you will be taxed on. And depending on how much you actually make, I believe the scales will slide, you know, for what percentage. No, I am not in favor heavy taxation on the sale of your primary residence.
If Bill C-10 passes with its present wording, it is promising to censor personal online content. Will you elaborate on the effects of an appointed agency having this power and the potential legal penalties they can enforce without a defense mechanism being provided to the accused content provider?
Oh my goodness, what a loaded question. Well, can you tell me the exact wording of Bill 10? This is the censorship bill, right?
It's the censorship bill, yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, when you're talking about censorship, there's a couple of things. For one thing, who controls the censorship? Is it Justin Trudeau? Do you want Justin Trudeau limiting what you can know? And I understand there's a lot of comments you can make around that and about what Trudeau himself knows. And another point of view on that is we already have hate laws. We already have laws that make it illegal for you to threaten another person. Parents, should be aware of what their kids are watching on TV, and what sort of internet influences there are. And I know that's very, very difficult, and it's tough to do. I know when our kids were younger, we actually turned off the Wi-Fi at 9 o'clock at night or whatever. But we certainly already have laws against threats, against pornography, against human trafficking, all of these things that are ostensibly, supposed to be stamped out with the censorship bills. So no, I really don't trust Justin Trudeau to censor my social media. I think I'm not going to I can't comment on the legal ramifications of that, just simply because I'm not a lawyer. But I think it's a really slippery slope, and I think it's a scary move when government tells you exactly what they want you to know and will not let you voice a dissenting opinion. This is Eastern Bloc stuff.
The Truth and Reconciliation, oh goodness, because they just call it the TRC. So the Truth and Reconciliation, I can't even say the word today. The calls to action. Which calls to action do you plan to implement in Lakeland, and how will you do it? Does that make any sense?
Are there options? Maybe they can clarify. Is there any more to the question than that?
There's no more to the question. I did look it up. There's 92 calls to action with Truth and Reconciliation. So just, is there any, does the PPC have any policy about Truth and Reconciliation with our Indigenous population or anything like that? Like, do they have a...
Well, we do have a policy on Indigenous relations, and frankly, it's based on the same values of respect, freedom, personal responsibility, truth that we would apply to any other person. When there's been loss of life and abuse, I think we need to acknowledge that. And I also think that energy is well spent moving forward. It's good to recognize and remember what's happened in the past so that we don't repeat our past mistakes. But there are so many issues around Indigenous populations, like, for instance, property rights, the ownership of natural resources, even clean drinking water on reserves, which I think should go under part of our environmental plan. There's so many things that we can engage and work towards better solutions on the Indigenous platform, and I think a lot of them are best addressed by looking at people as people.
Okay. This is a big one. What are your thoughts on conversion therapy? Will you please share your opinion or your party's opinion on how this will affect a person or parent wanting counseling to affirm biological identity? Do you believe the present wording denies the ability for a counselor to present a full spectrum of choices for a child dealing with gender dysmorphia? Please address how this affects the professional and faith counseling positions as well.
Now you promise you're going to answer or ask everybody that same question, right, Leah?
Yes, I am. Yeah, it was an important question. It came up with...
It's such a big question. What a long worded question. Um, Actually, I had a person in the constituency or in the riding ask me a similar question. And when I looked at the bill, I thought it was just really poorly worded. I believe when the vote came, our representative said no. But there's so many issues, you can't answer that in a yes or no, on a yes or no, just sort of a binary black or white, yes, no answer. There's just so many facets of it. What struck me was, again, where conversion therapy is discussed, is that we already have laws against harming youth or harming people of any age, medically or psychologically. So we can start on that. I think the bill goes into a lot of depth about taking a youth from Canada even and subjecting them to conversion therapy outside of the country. All right, so that opens up a whole can of worms. And as I say, I am not a lawyer, and our People's Party does not have a specific platform on that other than to say, well, we're going to treat the individual with respect. You know, physicians take the oath not to do any harm. It's a big question. So I compare that to, okay, if we have a youth who, you know, maybe kidnapped for another person or for another reason, for instance, you know, removed from the country for another reason, like to donate an organ, for instance, or to be trafficked somehow. I mean, these things are illegal. You cannot kidnap people from this country. I mean, that is an illegal thing. And I know that that's only one small part of the bill, but it is really a convoluted question. The question itself is very convoluted, and the bill is really, really muddily worded. I would ask whoever submitted the bill to go back and make it more clear, for one thing, on the conversion therapy. And for the person asking the question, I'm very interested in talking to it because there's so many aspects to it. Not the least of which is that healthcare is under the provincial auspices, not the federal auspices. But I would ask that person to clarify their question. And yeah, I'd be very interested in talking more about that.
Okay. COVID debt, climate change costs, the need to repair aging infrastructure. The costs are going up all around us. How do we pay for all of this? A serious, bold strategy to grow our economy is our only way forward, and local residents have the right to know where their candidates stand before Election Day.
I'll say they do. Yeah. Okay, so COVID, you're talking, you're mentioning COVID, infrastructure,
and climate change. The costs are going up.
Yeah. Yes, they certainly are. Okay, well, climate change, the money that we put into climate change goes in huge amount to the UN, which we've already stated is not something that we agree with. If we're charging Canadians taxes, I think it had better come back to Canadians to improve land, water, and, you know, clean drinking water on reserves would be money far better spent than sending it off. Our People's Party of Canada platform actually states in the COVID policy to defund much of the COVID testing and, you know, direct that money to specific cases and helping the people who are ill. I think our spending federally is completely off the grid. There's issues with infrastructure like sole source contracting, stopping pipelines, and then backing up our rail so that we can't get agriculture needs met. You know, there's a lot of tremendous issues around that. I guess to boil it down, the spending is completely out of control, and the current administration seems to think that the answer to that is just, you know, print more money. Well, then now we've got interest rates, which may go up. We've got inflationary measures, which really target seniors on fixed incomes and young people either on their own or just on the verge of starting a family. I mean, those are two fairly vulnerable sectors of society, which inflation will negatively impact. So I guess to boil it down, there are a few things that we can do. We can decrease taxation so that small businesses can flourish. Hire, when businesses are doing well, we hire more people. There's more taxation in there, more income that is taxable in the economy. We can stop so much government spending, giving tax dollars to the UN, especially after the shutdowns with COVID, is ludicrous, especially when Canada is probably the cleanest country in the world, and we cannot be responsible for places like China's emissions. Yeah, and infrastructure. I mean, I am absolutely in favor of pipelines. Get that oil in the pipelines, natural gas pipelines, and free up our rail and highways for transporting goods that are needed that way.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of our 10 questions that were sent in through the Chamber website. So we want to thank people that sent in their questions. We did combine some of them just for ease of, some of them touched on a lot of the same topics and stuff like that.
Try and boggle your candidate's mind. Thanks a lot, Leanne.
I know, right?
Hard.
And so now we just, in closing, just if there's anything else that you'd like to say, then we would welcome that.
Yes, I'm so excited. Okay, here's something that I would like to say after my little stump speech about, how schools do not own your children and the government does not own your body. Our constituency is huge. It goes from Athabasca to Lakeland, or our riding of Lakeland goes from Athabasca to Lloydminster. And Maxime Bernier is going to make 4 stops in this constituency. So this may be aired after he's here, which is kind of unfortunate. He will be on Sunday, September 12th. He will be at a private function in Mundare at 10 o'clock in the morning. He will be in Vegreville at noon. He will be in Vermilion at 3. And then he will be in Lloydminster at 7 o'clock in the evening at the Vic Juba. So I know that there's already been tremendous interest in that. And I think Mundare is already booked, like full. But the other 3 stops we're really excited to have him at. So yeah, he thinks he's given Lakeland a little bump, but I think Lakeland's given him a little bump. So we're just thrilled. And it's funny because I don't think that if Justin Trudeau were to land in our riding to give his candidate some support, I don't think he'd be welcomed as much as Maxime Bernier will be when he comes here.
Alrighty. So I guess with that, unless you have any other closing statements, we will just wrap up our interview.
All right. Thanks so much, Leanne. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.